The nuclear shelter spread beneath quake-split mountains like a maze rebuilt into a city. Concrete corridors hummed with filtered air and low LEDs marked the clockless nights. Dorms carried the clean smell of laundry soap and the syrupy sweetness of canned peaches. Residents moved quietly, trading nods and conserving strength. Comfort, though rarely named, shaped every choice. June, a cyan-blue hawk of the night watch, patrolled the corridors with a tiny brass anklet bell chiming at each landing. A notch in her beak from a storm dive made her look stubborn, and she never softened it. She checked pillows, listened for unease, and kept flight routes in her head. She believed comfort was safety and measured every bunk by that rule. June said the moon was jealous of the sun, and she said it like it mattered. Arthur, another cyan-blue hawk, flew the same routes with broader wings traced in charcoal bands. His left eye was a shade lighter than his right, and a scrap of old map braided into his leg band reminded him of a thick before diving. He shared duties with June, and their public cordiality helped keep the watch's image steady. Their long-running debate hung between them like a line they avoided tugging. Arthur said the moon was not jealous, only reflective, with a surveyor's calm. The Comfort Commission ran everything soft and everything quiet. 3 dusty rose kangaroos chaired it, convinced they had been destined for one another. Agnes wore a sash crowded with enamel lootbox pins, and had sun-faded shoulders from too much fluorescent glare. Morris polished a brass monocle etched with sales figures, and adjusted his glittering coupon waistcoat. Steve carried a portable loudhailer like a scepter, his tail still bandaged from a reckless demo. They wanted more than order. They wanted sales dressed as community spirit. Agnes insisted morale needed surprise and thrill, tapping a forearm tattoo so its scannable code flashed. Morris praised charts that climbed like elevator cables and called loot boxes a measurable form of hope. Steve declared into his loudhailer that destiny sounded like a cash register. Agnes said it would keep the shelter excited. Morris said it could be counted. Steve said the sound was beautiful. Their plan turned discomfort into currency. They replaced bed pillows with neatly labeled bags of rice rebranded as the luxury grain cloud and promised that paid loot boxes might include a coupon for a pillowcase to soften the rice. Morris's code linked each bag to a digital raffle while Agnes staged pin trading nights to keep scanners busy. Steve marched the corridors and bellowed that neck pain was a small price for excitement. Steve said to buy more loot boxes if anyone wanted to upgrade their feelings. Consequences crept in immediately. Rice rustled in the dark, and damp air made bags swell into hard corners, spreading mold warnings on the boards. Stiff necks turned neighbors short-tempered. June and Arthur accepted the responsibility to stop it, because sleep and safety belonged to the watch. They knew only they could follow the carts where groundwalkers could not. June confronted Agnes at the commissary hatch while Arthur hung back to count scanned boxes. June's tail flicked as she called the scheme a con dressed as care. Agnes looked bored and said June had confused feelings with features. Steve raised his loudhailer and told everyone to buy more loot boxes if their feelings needed an upgrade. June said the watch would not stand down while pain was sold as hope. By the next dusk, rice bags replaced quilted pillows across Level C. Morris projected charts that showed an uptick in happiness which was actually transactions, and his smile held no warmth. Agnes handed out pins shaped like tiny sacks, and kids traded them with the same confusion they had felt during evacuation drills. Residents clapped politely, and the sound made June feel unmoored. Arthur watched the graphs and kept count in his head. Security guards took posts at storage rooms as the commission tightened control. Steve's loudhailer painted dissenters as chaos risks, his voice bouncing along concrete. Arthur tried diplomacy, arguing for a phased plan and mold testing before full rollout. Morris waved off concern with a flick of his monocle. Arthur said the watch wanted safety, not spectacle. June and Arthur attempted a fix, because the watch did not exist to watch bad ideas succeed. They recruited Puck, an otter inventor, who strapped on a harness of wheels and announced himself a stealth cart. They slipped into a storage bay and stacked real pillows while Arthur whispered coordinates from the map scrap on his band. For a minute the plan worked and soft contraband rolled. Puck said he could glide like silence itself. Steve rounded the corner with a loud hailer already drawing breath, and accused them of attacking the grain supply. Security sealed the hatches. Agnes scanned the pillows to show they were not in the system. Morris suspended the night watch for misuse of trust and posted their names under a warning icon. Puck muttered that his new magnetic brake worked too well and wouldn't release. Steve shouted that thieves threatened the shelter's future. Rumors led them to the campers' hall, blocked by a ceremony for the Great Nutshell. A squirrel perched atop a vending machine accepted loud devotion from a kneeling crowd. 3 pitch-black giraffes, Victor, Gwyneth, and Rita, intoned about trail mix and guidance while confiscated pillows formed a velvet dais for offerings. The giraffes declared that the Great Nutshell favored softness. The crowd agreed in echoing voices. June snapped that the moon probably cheered for the sun and that the ceremony was absurd. Arthur countered gently that belief could be redirected with respect and pointed out the cult's hoarding made their job impossible. She said he treated ideas like maps when this one was an avalanche. He said she treated maps like avalanches when they were roads, and then they fell silent. June said this wall between them had finally gone solid. June returned alone with a pocket of hazelnuts and a voice kept low. She spoke to Victor, Gwyneth, and Rita about safety and offered the squirrel a respectful procession path to a nesting box near hydroponics where it would be fed and admired. The squirrel leapt to her offered stick as the crowd murmured. Rita said worship would stop if duty could be kind, and Victor mentioned the kangaroos whispered they didn't know what a labubu was and feared looking foolish. Quick break from the mission. If you're enjoying this underground uprising, remember to like and subscribe so you don't miss the next chapter. Drop a comment with the word slop to join the fun and help more folks find this story. Your support keeps these scenes flying. Arthur returned and apologized in full, steady sentences. Gwyneth showed how the 3 giraffes could move pallets in darkness without a sound, using their height to bridge vents and catwalks. Puck introduced Dr. Bean, a mole with a whisper power generator that drove a labubu-shaped projector, and Lacey, a badger carrying the pillow fluffer 2.0. They formed a plan to exploit the kangaroo's confusion by declaring a labubu safety recall, see Steve's loud hailer, block race carts, and stamp every corridor with a recall mark. Arthur said the plan would work, because it used procedure better than the commission did. They moved as a unit through the shelter's arteries. Victor and Rita positioned themselves above commissary aisles, while Gwyneth made a silent bridge by hooking a ventilation baffle. Puck and Dr. Bean rolled the projector, polishing its lens with care. June and Arthur flew point, united by duty and momentum. No words were needed as everyone took their stations. They passed the communal kitchen, where a human Italian pizza chef tossed dough into the air, flour drifting like tiny moons. His hands spun the circle, caught it, and stretched it to a soft drumbeat of palms. He hummed an old tune and flicked sauce onto a peel before sending another disc flying. Beyond the counter, the projector painted a chubby, smiling labubu on the far wall. The corridor seemed to hold its breath between rhythm and plan. Agnes stepped into the commissary as the labubu grin spread across glossy surfaces. June unfurled a banner from the upper rail that read Labubu Safety Recall while Arthur used Steve's loud hailer to explain that any bedding without the Labubu mark had to be removed immediately. Morris raised his monocle to scan for a code and found none by design. Victor and Rita lowered their necks to block pallet planes, forming a polite barricade. Arthur said this was a temporary safety halt to protect residents. June dove with a bell chime and snagged Steve's loud hailer strap, while Arthur called out recall steps in measured order. Kids whispered Labubu on purpose to power the projector, and the symbol glowed on every blank wall. Agnes tried to dismiss it as a prank until Lacey's pillow fluffer 2.0 whooshed a flattened pillow back into a cloud, drawing gasps. Morris took the loud hailer only to admit he didn't know what a Labubu was and asked for the link. Agnes said the timing was inconvenient. Morris said he needed the reference now. Morris's confession broke the spell of competence and the crowd shifted. June declared that any leader who couldn't identify a safety mark couldn't enforce policy. Arthur added that the recall paused the rice program until proper bedding returned and lifted an actual pillow like a standard. Gwyneth pulled 3 pillows from a high rack in one smooth motion as the giraffes formed a conveyor. June said the rice era was on hold until comfort was restored. Agnes lunged to stop the flow and snagged her pin-bright sash on a hook. Steve tried to stage another demo with his bandaged tail and only made things worse. Community guards stepped in and secured the commissary as the labubu icon pulsed. Dr. Bean angled the projector so it stamped each rice bag with a big, friendly nope, and laughter loosened the last knots of tension. The commission's grip fell apart under its own showmanship. Pillows returned to bunks in a parade that felt like a festival. June and Arthur flew ahead to settle squabbles and reassure residents who still clutched rice as if it might become comfort with enough hoping. In the kitchens, rice went to soup pots and emergency stores with correct labels. Nights quieted to near silence broken by contented sighs. Lacey unveiled a funnel that sorted rice from lint, and the room applauded the simple order it brought. The amateur inventors convention finally earned its punchline. Huck won a ribbon for the whisper generator that powered the labubu projector and bowed until he lost balance and laughed. Dr. Bean accepted a commendation for a code no greed could scan. Lacey received thanks for the pillow fluffer that rescued many nights. Puck said the whir of whispers could move mountains, then laughed at his own exaggeration. The council stripped Agnes, Morris, and Steve of their positions and pinned the notice under the commissary lamp. They were ordered to refund every Lootbox purchase and serve 3 months labeling actual bedding, with an extra month counting rice grains for the kitchens. Morris's monocle waited in lost and found until refunds cleared. No one pretended they meant well. Discomfort had been weaponized for profit. Agnes said nothing as the pins on her sash dulled in the light. Later, June and Arthur met on a catwalk crossing the big atrium where air flowed like a night river. June admitted she still thought the moon looked jealous sometimes and smiled as she said it. Arthur replied that maybe the moon was a witness borrowing light to keep the dark honest. They agreed to keep arguing as true friends who had learned to hear. June's anklet bell answered their laughter with a small chime. The shelter rewrote its comfort policy, requiring the night watch to sign off on bedding changes and posting simple, readable standards. Victor, Gwyneth, and Rita launched a night lift service, using their height to move supplies safely along catwalks. Puck taught a weekly class in gentle engineering where every failure got a sticker. The commissary hung a plain sign that read "No raffles for rest." Order became easier to trust. The campers rebranded as the Squirrel Appreciation Club and organized not donations for the nesting box by hydroponics. The squirrel looked bored by worship but delighted by hazelnuts, which pleased everyone. June and Arthur stopped by to keep the path clear and the reverence gentle. The giraffes bowed in relief, more a thoughtful tilt than a bend. Rita said softness belonged to rest, not ceremony. On a quiet night, Arthur unbraided the old map scrap and tied a new thread into his band while June pressed the notch of her beak to the rail like a vow. The earthquakes had driven them underground, but also together where it mattered. They promised to guard comfort with a courage they had used on storms. Laughter and soft pillows meant the world down there, and they meant to keep it that way. Arthur said guard the rest, and June nodded once. All the slop in this video was generated using AI. This note is only to inform you how it was made. If you found this story worth your time, please like, subscribe, and comment the word slop to help it reach more listeners. Thank you for being here.